All right. Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Coach P's Perspective. I'm pumped, man. Today I have on a coach that inspires me. I want to say a famous coach, Coach Crowell. So he is the head wrestling coach at Nazareth area high school up in Pennsylvania. And I'll put his bio, with this podcast. But Coach has won several state titles in the National Hall of Fame. Been highly successful everywhere he's gone. We were just talking previous to starting the recording. Sammy Sasso wrestles for Ohio State is one of his guys. I mean, Coach, you've put out just a tremendous number of high-level wrestlers, but you and I met years ago, and I'm pumped to have you on, so thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. This is fun. It's great reconnecting.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, years ago, you came to Kansas, and we had like a private leadership coaching thing, and got to be there and meet you, and kind of hit it off and picked your brain. And for me, one of the things I found out about highly successful people a lot of times is if you ask them for help, a lot of times they're willing to do so. You were like, hey, and so you sent me, your team honor manual that you use with your team and some things like that. And so for me as a coach, I really appreciate that because I'm always trying to learn from the best, and you're one of the best out there.
So I have to say, I got something from you that has been really, really valuable. And when I came back from that leadership academy, I sat down. It took me about 2 weeks to put it together, but I came up with the Nazareth Wrestlers Creed.
Yeah.
And I got my creed. That creed. It was like one of those things. Like I'll hear something like that, which you just mentioned it. You just off the cuff said something about creed. I was like, creed. What's a creed? And you explained it to me. You shared yours with me, and I went home right after that and went to work on it. It took me about 2 weeks, and since that time, that's been probably about 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, probably. Our team repeats it after every practice and after every competition. So it's actually meant a lot. I really appreciate that. That really helped us a lot.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Yeah, our creed's super important to our program, the culture of our program, and yeah, I love it. So, the wrestling world is so small, man. We get to kind of just pick people's brains and learn things. And again, another reason I'm excited to have you on. And it's not just wrestling people that listen to this podcast, man. I mean, I got businessmen and women and moms and dads and athletes and a lot of people, but principles are principles, and they apply everywhere once you know them, and you're able to take those and put them in other fields. So, well, let's kind of start out here, Coach. Tell me about hey, where did you grow up? How did you even get into the sport of wrestling?
All right. So right now I live in far eastern Pennsylvania, actually right on the New Jersey border, just a little over an hour north of Philadelphia. But I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, about 30 miles southeast of Erie, only a couple miles from the New York border. Small town, Corey, Pennsylvania. And I grew up there, and I played 3 sports all through high school, football, wrestling, and track. And then I matriculated to Lock Haven. So that was about halfway across the state. That's almost dead center. And wrestled there in college. And Lock Haven, now it's Lock Haven University. It was Lock Haven State College back then. And then I made my way to Easton, Pennsylvania, where I live now. It's in the Lehigh Valley. The airport used to be called the ABE Airport, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton. It's now Lehigh Valley International Airport. But anyway, it's right. Lehigh University's a 20-minute drive for me. I've been living here since 1976, so I guess this is my home now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you even get into the sport of wrestling? Was it one of those things where the PE teacher was like, hey, you look like a wrestler, jump in here? Or how did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I'm not even, there was a friend of mine, we lived outside of town. So we were very rural area where we lived, but the guy that lived across the street from me, he said something about this wrestling thing. So it wasn't anything in school. Back then in elementary school, there was no sports whatsoever. He mentioned something about wrestling, and we could do it through the YMCA. So we had to get a ride into the YMCA. So that was in 6th grade. I started in 6th grade. Interestingly enough, and I didn't really know until a little bit later, the guy that was the coach of that was actually a state champion from Pennsylvania, Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, which is down pretty close to like State College, where Penn State is located. He had been a state champion in 1947, and he owned a pizza shop and also worked in a local factory. But he was my first coach, a guy named Mike Comets, who's not alive anymore now. But yeah, I kind of had a little bit of, the guy at least knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Pennsylvania is a wrestling hotbed and has been for a long time. So it's a, extremely tough state. The best of the best come from there. And of course, we see what's going on at the college level, which is just incredible. But so, once you wrestled through college, at what point did you realize I want to get into coaching? This is something I want to do.
Yeah. So this is kind of a weird thing for me. Believe it or not, I was kind of interested in that even when I was still in high school. I just thought, I'm getting towards the end of my high school days. It's not like it is today. You start thinking about college like your senior year. And for me, and I was thinking, I put a lot of time and energy and effort and thought and everything into athletics and things like that. And I thought, well, the only thing I'm really interested in is that. So I figured I'll be a health and phys ed teacher and a wrestling coach in my future. So fortunately, my high school coach was a Lock Haven graduate, and he kind of steered me toward Lock Haven. I went there, no scholarship, no nothing. But yeah, it was kind of, so as you get older, I think you have a tendency to reflect back on things. This is really, really a weird thing. So I look back into my early days, even when I was watching sports on TV, and I came to realize at some point that I like teams based on their coach. So growing up, so the football team that I liked, that coach is not the coach anymore, obviously, was the Dallas Cowboys, because I liked somehow, someway the persona, the person, whatever it was about Tom Landry somehow resonated in my soul someplace. There was just something that I respected about him. I liked the way he did it. It was kind of with dignity, but he was also very innovative and kind of cutting edge in things that he did. But he was also very respected. So I liked the Dallas Cowboys, and I also liked Penn State football. And of course, Joe Paterno, his end didn't end so well, but I mean, for the 99% of his career, was obviously one of the most respected coaches out that was in college football. He valued character and getting an education and all those things. So yeah, those are the two teams that I kind of followed and watched, and yeah, it was because of the coach.
It's interesting. And I, growing up in Oklahoma, we don't have a pro football team, so a lot of people lean toward Dallas Cowboys. I've been a Cowboys fan my whole life, and it's kind of difficult these days to be a Cowboys fan, but I'm more of a college guy. I'm a diehard OU Boomer Sooner.
Yeah.
But no, Tom Landry, I 100% get it. I think I'm kind of the same way. I never really thought about that, but a lot of the teams I like, I think is kind of based off of the coach, So yeah, I never really thought about that. So you just brought that up.
Yeah. Like if I don't respect how the coach does it, I just can't like the team. There's something about, I've got to respect the whole package, win or lose. I have to respect kind of the process and the way it's done, I'm not going to follow somebody or a team that, kind of cuts the corners, or, you can't respect the way they do what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into, more of your coaching career, while we're kind of talking about it, you got a lot of colleges right there in Pennsylvania that are exceptional at wrestling. And of course, not just Pennsylvania. You got Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, the whole area. Who are some of your favorite college programs right now, and maybe why? Right
now, the current one? Well, one of my best friends is Pat Santoro at Lehigh. We meet together once a week with a small group of guys that meet for a Bible study on Wednesday nights. And Pat is one of them. We probably talk on the phone a couple other times during the week, just not always about wrestling, could be about a lot of things. But he's a guy that I respect. If I was going to send anybody to college, he would be in my top 3 guys that I would send there. They have a really, really good culture there. They do things right. They maybe even to their own peril, like he will not cut a corner. He's not going to, do something that's kind of shady. He will do it the right way. So he's just a great guy. They have great people there. I actually first met Tom Ryan, the head coach at Ohio State, 20 years ago. He was recruiting one of my guys. And I got to know him then. And he was a Hofstra at the time. And I just kind of kept in contact with him. There's just a lot of things that we have in common. He just has become a friend of mine. And you mentioned Sammy Sasso, he goes there. I would think you'd have to ask Sammy, of course, but I think maybe some of the fact that he went there had to do with my relationship with Tom and that I recommended him. Of course, you gotta respect and be highly impressed with Penn State. My oldest son actually started wrestling at Pitt. He decided after his first year there, he graduated from high school in 2007. So at the end of the 2007-2008 season, decided he didn't want to wrestle anymore. And I had another one of my wrestlers that was at Penn State at the time. And he told the coaches about it that, hey, so this guy, he's pretty good. He was a 2-time state runner-up and he's not even wrestling. So he ended up transferring to Penn State and transferred there in January of 2009. And Cale Sanderson came that spring, that April. So he wrestled for Coach Sanderson for 3 years or whatever. For 3 years. So, I kind of got to know him right at the beginning, when he was first there. We had a chance to talk a number of times and, they have been incredibly, there's not a lot of people that really have a major impact and that actually changes things. You look back and say, Dan Gable did that, he changed college wrestling. And I would say just, not that I'm an expert or anything, but that Cale Sanderson coming to Penn State changed a lot of college wrestling, technically. I think even culturally, before he came, you never really heard any college wrestlers talk about going out and having fun when they wrestled. It seemed like it was more like war. And it was a different approach that all of a sudden they are doing it and they're successful. And I think it became obviously not only just accepted, but maybe this is the new way of doing things. So, those are 3, but there's other programs. I've working with the NWCA. I've gotten a chance to get to know and meet a lot of college coaches. So I could go down pretty good list I could go down of college coaches and programs that they're really at NC State. Pat Popolizio, he was another guy. I remember the first I had met him because he was the president of the NWCA.
Okay. And
so we would be in a lot of meetings and things together. But I heard him speak. They had him as one of the speakers at the convention, the NWCA National Convention. And I was sitting with Pat Santoro when we were listening to him. And within 3 minutes, there's something that I always say when I speak to coaches. One of the first things I say is, you've got to know what you believe. So it might seem like a simple phrase, but it's actually really huge because, everybody likes to win, but you really have to know what you're about. What are your priorities? How are you going to do this? What do you want your team to look like? What do you value the most? So I kind of sum it up is you have to know what you believe. So we heard Pat Popolizio talk, and I turned to Pat after about 2 minutes. I said, he knows what he believes. You could see he was, he had it down, and everybody's got a different take on it, but I don't think you're one that successful people, they're always kind of changing a little bit, but their core of them is they absolutely know what they believe.
Yeah. And that's a list of phenomenal coaches right there. And hitting back on Penn State real quick, I wrestled in college in the era of it's war and beat people up, and we kind of had like two styles at that time in my mind, one being from Oklahoma, but we had like Oklahoma State, John Smith, you're wrestle from the outside, you're a little slicker, faster. And then we had Iowa style. And I grew up in that. I shot all low levels and high C's and didn't hand fight a lot, and got in college and really learned hand fighting. And I kind of switched my style to a little more Iowa style. And but as a coach, I've embraced, not that I know all the things that Penn State does, because I don't, and I wish I did, but I've changed a little as a coach and tried to create some, as far as the culture goes, a little more fun. And so maybe a blend of those things. But, so you were just talking about, know what you believe. So it leads me right into what I was going to ask you next. You've built a number of successful programs. What are some of and I'm sure that, over the years, you've kind of changed things a little bit as you've evolved as a coach and continue to learn, but what are some of just those core pillar foundation things that you have for your wrestling teams that really allow them to grow and succeed? And, maybe some of the coaches listening, like, I can implement that into my program. But so what are some of those core things for you guys?
Well, I think one of the things, and I'd say over the last maybe 5 or 6 years, it's not that I didn't believe this, but I've actually been intentional in trying to cultivate it. So the word culture gets, I think, almost overused to the point that I don't know if people even recognize it as or understand what it is. But to use a word, we have really focused on developing a culture of that values the kids and the young people that wrestle for us. We have become so I guess one of the easiest things for me to say is that now I've coached, I just finished my 36th year as a head wrestling coach. I have coached at 3 different wrestling programs during those 36 seasons. I have I have enjoyed my coaching the last 5 or 6 years, probably more than I have in the first 30. Yeah. And there maybe not a lot of people that would say that, because, and that would probably go for just about any job that, as the years go, the jobs become more challenging. Like probably anybody that works, it doesn't matter what job, they've been in a job for 20 years, guaranteed they're saying, this is way harder today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago. And I just have enjoyed it more. And we have just been way more intentional on doing things that kind of reach into and touch the lives of our kids. And it's really helped our kids get along really, really well. And even if things aren't going great, one loss wise, nobody's down, nobody's blaming anybody else. It's still everybody comes in, for the most part, I think every day they come in with a smile. It's something that they really, I think, look forward to. And obviously wrestling practice is hard. It's physically really, really, it's a tough thing. I can't think of anything much tougher than that for a teenage boy or girl to do. But we kind of, the thing that has changed for me is we are intentionally doing things that touch their lives. It has really changed the way we do things and how well we enjoy, the training and the competing together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that, there's a number of books about it, and I've listened to lots of podcasts or stories and things like that. But, coaches that really impact lives, and a lot of times, and when I very first started coaching, did I value the kids? Absolutely, I valued the kids, and I built some good relationships that I still have. But I think winning is always fun. I always want to preface this. I like to win. I hate to lose. Winning's fun. Losing is not fun. But I think maybe I valued it a little bit more. And I'll give you an example. I had wrestled in college. I coached in college a little bit. Now I'm coaching high school. And I couldn't understand the high school kid that's in the room that doesn't want to work hard and try to be a state champion. In my mind, I couldn't get it. Why are you even on the team? It was so frustrating to me. And then after a couple of years, I began to realize some of these kids don't even care if they're ever varsity. They just want to be part of something positive.
Yeah.
Their buddies are wrestling, so they want to wrestle. Now, do we get them to buy into our culture and to learn to work hard and to improve? Absolutely. And so it took a little bit of growth process for me as a coach to come in and begin to realize that, for you, what are some of the things, maybe some of the areas that, and man, 36 years of coaching is a lot of time for me to ask this question about, but what are some of the areas that you feel like you've really grown in, and maybe some of the things that, right now really help you to enjoy it even more?
Yeah. So we do something every single day at the end of practice that's either, culture building, relationship building, um, uh, anything along that line. Has nothing to do with actual wrestling.
Yeah.
And even relationship, all those things. So we do something every single day. And that's actually one of the things I tell coaches, that it's really I think an important thing. Like, coaches should be, and it's funny, Heath Esslinger, is a good friend of mine, former coach at Tennessee Chattanooga. I was doing, had done his wrestling camps, and he just made an off kind of handed just comment. We were watching the kids warm up, and he said something about he loves watching these kids smile.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hit me that smile is really an important thing. And I started to think about coaches and things like that. And I think of like coaches that come into wrestling practice or football practice or whatever, and they already got their game faces on. They look like they're angry before they even start. And you find out they probably are once you do start, but they're angry about something. That's one thing that I really encourage. I encourage my own coaches to do it, and others, is your coaching staff should be characterized by a lot of smiles. They've actually even proved that like smiles like trigger that thing in your brain, that I even forget what the stuff's called that that your brain fires out, but
like serotonin or something.
yeah, it actually does that the same way as other things do. Like, for whatever it is, like, it actually impacts, just from your smile, impacts another person and the way they feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I do care. Like, my practices, kids are coming in, I'm saying something to a lot of them. Some we have a running joke going, there's something that I'm interacting. Maybe I saw something and I'm telling a story or whatever, but every day it starts out really as a really lighthearted, relational thing that's going on, that, if they're not smiling before I see them, I really hope that they are smiling, very soon after they come into our wrestling room. So that's one of the things we actually just start out with. And even our practices, we don't scream, we don't yell at guys. We, like, for us to be harsh and use a harsh would be like, a couple times a year. They should be like, if we do that, they should be shaking in their shoes, because we get the coach where he's actually angry. This would be bad, and actually good for us. So you just can't do that all the time. I think back at teachers, that I'd have, you'd go in and they were always barking. After a while, you just turn them off. It's like they could scream all they wanted and you're just not even paying attention. So I never wanted to be that coach. But we do a number of things, and I've just picked them up from a number of different sources. One of the things that we do at the end of practice, we do a spotlight, which, you might be aware of what a spotlight is. What you do is you each day is a different athlete on the team or coach. So we do every athlete and every coach gets spotlighted. So in that spotlight, the one being spotlight actually just sits there and says nothing. And you go around the team, and each wrestler and each coach, one at a time, looks at that athlete in the eye and doesn't talk about him. He talks to him. They have eye contact. It's like they're the only two in the room. And each person tells something to that person about him or to him that they like, respect, admire, whatever, but it's not how good of a wrestler they are. It's just one of those things. So and you go around and it takes maybe like 15 minutes by the time you get around the whole team and coaches and everything. And actually we've had too many people on the team to have we do kind of, volunteer, but yeah, we do that. So by the end of the year, actually I got spotlighted for the first time this year, because I run it and I've never done myself. And we got to the end where we'd done everybody. And one of the wrestlers said, hey coach, we haven't done you yet. And so I got spotlighted for the first time this year. But we've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years. It's been a huge thing. It works on a couple different levels. Number one, kids will actually learn to take compliments. A lot of times they don't get complimented on anything other than maybe their wrestling ability. So they get used to receiving a compliment. Kids get more comfortable with actually giving compliments, because the cool thing with kids is they just make fun of each other. Like that's what they do. They cut in, and that's fun too. But there's a lot of benefit to actually, talking about their character and who they are and things kind acts they've done and things like that. So that has been really, really beneficial. We do, this has been a good one. It's called Defining Moment. So we can do like maybe 4 or 5 kids in a day. I explain what a defining moment is. It's, that point in time that kind of change somewhat the course of your life. Obviously these kids that are somewhere between like 15 and 18 years old, their defining moments aren't the same as like an adult, but all our coaches do it too. So everybody does their defining moment. And it'll be something that happened in their life that kind of changed their life from that point on, like for the better. What you find out is probably 90 or plus % of those were a negative that happened to them that created a positive change in their life. So a lot of times those kids didn't even recognize that. They didn't recognize that, that something bad that at the time, something they thought negative that happened at the time actually was critical in forming a better path or making really positive changes in their lives. So that's one thing. They don't recognize themselves. And then you hear your whole team hears everybody talk about a negative that happened that turned upon. It helps you view, I think, life in a different way, because what's so common today, and I think we'd all agree that maybe kids are a little bit more emotionally fragile today than they were 50 years ago. And one of the things that it does is I think it helps you see, just because something happened bad, it's not the end of the world. Like your life isn't over because of that. Like maybe it's the beginning of the best part of your life from that point on. So I'll do that early in the season, because I'll use it actually just very kind of subtly later on. Like maybe one of our kids gets upset or loses a match he thought he was going to win, or maybe he's winning and gets pinned, something happens and, they're upset, they're devastated. And I'll just go and I'll just walk by them just very casual and say, hey, maybe this is your defining moment, so I have a good friend of mine, Jared Spencer. He's actually one of the guys in our little Bible study group. He's a sports psychologist, Dr. Jared Spencer. And he would say that what you did is you reframed it. So it's the same picture. It's just looking at that picture from a different angle. So rather than looking at this event as being a devastating life is over, you look at this exact same event and see it as it potentially could begin, a huge thing of improving me or, put me on a better path. So that's been really beneficial. We do put-ups. Those are really easy to do. Like at the end of practice, I can do this in 3 minutes. I'll ask maybe 3 or 4 different kids. I'll just say, what did you see that was good in practice today? When one wrestler might say, I was working with so-and-so and, he showed me a good move that really helped me today. I go to somebody else, what'd you see? I was just looking around the room. It seemed like everybody was really working hard today. Going to somebody, what did you say? Oh, so that's done very, very quickly. But I think as good at that as that is, what the biggest benefit is, I used to, when like a dual meet was over, you bring everybody in, you kind of have your little team meeting. I used to, if we weren't wrestling well, I'm chewing them out and all that. I never do that anymore. Never. Yeah. I'll just say, okay, even if we wrestled horribly, I would say, okay, I know tonight didn't work out the way you wanted it to, but we'll get better. It's going to get better as the seasons go on. Okay, what'd you see tonight that was good? And you go around and know it just by default. It's really interesting. I've never yet have a kid that says, oh, so-and-so, crush this kid, or so-and-so, just really beat this kid. But to a kid, they'll say something like, so-and-so was behind and never gave up and fought right to the end. He caught up, and, they're character things. Somebody else will say, our whole team, they were cheering for every wrestler that was out there, So what that does is, number one, it actually just by default, it helps support the very things that you are most likely as a coach trying to encourage. And the other thing, it helps those kids recognize those things that are actually have more value than just, the outcome of maybe the dual meet or the individual bout. And those things have just been, they're so much valuable when the athletes are doing it and recognizing other kids. I could say that. I could say, oh, somebody didn't quit, they fought to the end. But to have their peers say it is way more powerful. So it always ends up, no matter how bad the outcome on the scoreboard is, we always end and leave on a positive note. It's always a positive.
Yeah, there's a number of tremendous things there. One, you didn't once talk about technique or the newest strength conditioning and those things are important, right? But these are the things right here that as coaches, we have to know. And you gave us tangible things to do. We use spotlighting with our team, and actually we didn't do it the last 2 years. I need to re-implement that. And I learned it, and Heath probably learned it from you, but I learned it from Heath a number of years ago. And it's so valuable. And actually I kind of took a little break from it because we kind of have the same kids rolling through. Right. And so I want to reintroduce it, but that defining moment, I'm about to add that. Put ups, I'm about to add that to what we do in our program. And you're building culture. Like we're talking about, culture can get overused, but you're literally building the kind of culture that you want in your room. You're showing the kids the character. And these same things, these can be used by the wrestling coach, the football coach. They can be used by the local businessman. They can be used with your family at home. I mean, all of this is about relationship building and really pointing out the things that matter in life. Like you said, and it's so powerful whenever one athlete says this to another. And so all of a sudden now you get your kids, heck, if somebody gives a defining moment, you now know more about that person's life. Exactly. You now care more about that person's life. Like, dang, they could be your teammate, but you might not realize, like, man, I didn't know what you even been through. Right. And now you value them more, So yeah, these are phenomenal, Coach, man. I absolutely love these things. Yeah.
There's another we do. It's called Hero, Highlight, and Heartache.
I'm about to ask you that at the end of this podcast. I use it on every podcast, but go ahead and explain.
Yeah. So that one has been a really good one. The first time I did it, it was actually 2 days after we upset a team in the state duels. We actually won on criteria and won the state championship. I mean, we are flying high. So we come back that next Monday for practice. We've got 2 weeks to go before our individual postseason starts. So I knew we wouldn't do too much working out that day. We just talked about, kind of the direction we're going and who's going what weights and all that kind of stuff. So we ended that on that day and doing this hero, highlight, and heartache. So each athlete would tell, and coach, again, all the coaches do these same things. You tell the hero of your life, highlight of your life, and then a heartache of your life. So we go around, we get to one of our kids. He's outstanding athlete. He's one of my best wrestlers. Great student. He's good looking kid, great personality, great leader. Everybody in the school just loves him. Every teacher loves him. I mean, he's that kid that comes around, maybe every 10 to 15, 20 years, So he gives his hero. He gives the highlight. He probably said like, winning the state tournament 2 days ago, and then he starts in talking about the heartbreak. He doesn't even get through the first sentence and his eyes fill up with tears. And actually tears started running down his face. And he talked about his parents had split up and they did not have a good relationship. And he's trying to, negotiate that, both of those things. And it was just heartbreaking. So those things serve a really good purpose. And one of the things, I think they're a little cathartic. They actually, like, where does a kid go to kind of unburden himself sometimes? Your kids are carrying around some heartaches, and a lot of times you can't tell your friends, you can't tell, it's not cool to, maybe you can't tell your parents, you can't tell anybody. That's why, you go to a psychologist and, you pay them $200 an hour or whatever to, you can unload some of your baggage. And so it's a safe place to do that. So that's good for them. But I'll tell you what else was really helpful is, like, every kid on our team is thinking this kid's got everything, he's got, and they say, you know what, he's struggling with some things exactly the same way I am. Mm-hmm. And it is something about that when some more, and you have to be careful and not care, but explain that, these are things that are family. Like, you don't tell the deepest things of your family to everybody. These are like kind of family things. So they're for us, but when the deeper things that, that people care about and the hurts they have, it really does help to cement people together. Like, so you and your wife know things about each other that nobody else knows, but that's actually a critical part of your relationship. Same thing here, the same thing, like, my brother, there's things that we know. And so that's been a really, really good thing that we do too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And again, I'm going to, at the end of this podcast, that's how I always kind of close. So I'm going to ask you some of those things. Yeah, it's funny you brought up Dr. Spencer. So I was just telling somebody earlier, a pastor friend of ours who actually lives about 2 blocks over, and we were out walking the neighborhood and I saw him. And so I was like, I got to get ready to go. I got a podcast interview. And so I was telling him about you. And I said, so this is like one of those kind of crazy things. I was like, I had met Dr. Jared Spencer. I want to say via social media, maybe. I saw something he posted. I messaged him. We messaged back and forth. And he ends up sending me like all of his Mind of the Athlete stuff. Like, hey, you can use this with your team. And we developed a relationship. And it was like maybe 3 weeks later, whenever I met you at the Leadership Academy. And then I think maybe you said something about Dr. Spencer, and I'm like, I ran over, I had a bracelet on. It was like a Mind of the Athlete bracelet he sent me. But I'm like, what a small world.
Yeah.
Like, here you guys were in the same Bible study together and you're good friends and halfway across the country from me. And I met both you guys within like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dr. Spencer is an amazing man, and what he does with Mind of the Athlete is awesome. So I guess I'll kind of hit on that real quick, because this applies to athletes and coaches. But, in your training, whenever you're running practice, I mean, you just gave us a lot of things that you do right there as far as building culture. But you've had some just amazing athletes, some amazing wrestlers over the years. What are some of the things that you do to kind of help them with their mindset? And maybe that's learn to deal with nerves. I know for me growing up, my dad's a Hall of Fame wrestling coach in Oklahoma, and it was a lot of pressure. I was actually a better college wrestler, probably. And I was a successful high school wrestler, but probably better in college than I was high school. My own doing. I felt a lot of pressure with my dad being who he was as a coach, and I didn't deal with it well. In college, all of a sudden, I just kind of released that and was able to wrestle freely again and enjoy wrestling more. What are some of the things that you do to help your athletes learn to deal with pressure?
Yeah. So it's kind of an ongoing, we're talking about different things all the time. I'm a storyteller. I read one time, someone said that most good leaders are actually pretty good storytellers because, I read a really good book by a guy named Tim Elmore. He's a, pretty prolific author and speaker. And he talks a lot about these last two generations of people, millennials and Generation Z. And, he talks about how they're different than any other generation that's come out. And his book, Marching Off the Map, talks a lot about, about these young people and really those kinds of things are, you've got to understand like that kids in the year 2021 do not see and necessarily think about things the same way as I do as a 67-year-old man that was born in 1953. It's just a whole different way of looking at things. And they are under pressures that I was never under as an athlete. So we are talking about these kinds of things, about handling the pressure. And we don't even use handling. I really look at one of my main jobs as a coach is to help remove the pressure off of my athletes, like helping. So if you're having a golfer that's coming up and ready to swing the golf club, if I'm standing behind him and I'm screaming, come on, swing that club, come on, harder, do it, that's not going to help him do that skill very well. And that's a great challenge. So I've used this as an illustration. I've used it when I talk to coaches. Maybe we're in a cafeteria or something, and there'll be a rows of tiles that will be on the floor. And I'll say, I can walk this row of, say it's 9-inch tiles. I can walk back and forth on that row of tiles without falling off, either like not stepping off from that 9-inch wide path. And it is the easiest thing in the world. I mean, it's so easy. I could only do part of it blindfolded. Said, however, I can make that same skill almost impossible. But to me, it would be impossible to do if I just took that row of tiles and put it 1,000 feet in the air, right? So it's the same skill. You're walking the same 9-inch wide path, but what turned it from very, very easy to extremely difficult is the fear of failure. Yeah. In that case, failure is going to be fatal. There are a lot of young people and old people for that matter. I mean, anybody in athletics, that's how they view failure, as being fatal. It is, they're under a tremendous amount of pressure, self-imposed a lot of times to be successful. And the more you think about it, the harder it is to do that seemingly simple skill that you could do in practice without even thinking. You go out in front when, the dual meet's on the line, or a state championship's on the line, or just getting to states on the line. It can be very, very, very challenging. So we spend a great deal of time just talking about the process, like talking about performing the skill. For example, I was just talking with Tom Ryan via text message. And one of the things I was talking to him about was the fact that, so when I have my guys competing, especially going into the postseason, I will tell them this, that most likely, if you fail to perform or to have the outcome that you want, most likely it will not be due to a mistake. It will be due to the fact that you didn't wrestle enough during that 6-minute match. Because if you watch, under the pressure, kids do less and less actual wrestling. They're just looking at each other, or, because they're afraid of making a mistake. And in their mind, a mistake is going to be the worst possible thing. You can make up for mistakes. It's going to be really hard. Now you can win, but the less wrestling you do, the outcome is your chances of having a positive outcome is going to be less. That's why the athletes that can go out and just perform freely, almost as if it looks like they don't even care if they're winning or losing, they're just performing. Actually, that skill, they become more proficient and they can actually do better than the one who's, afraid of failure. And we know, the greater the fear of that failure, the harder it is to do even the skills they could do easily. So yeah, we focus on we focus on just the performance, and we talk about, the outcome's going to be whatever it's going to be. You can't a lot of times change the outcome. What you can change, though, you have full control over, is how much you wrestle and what you put into it, and how much you just take those fears and just get rid of them, and just focus on performing the skills, do them as often and as hard as you can do it, and let the outcome be whatever it's going to be.
Yeah. And then, even as a fan of wrestling, it's just so fun to watch people just go out there. I mean, I've always admired, and I admired in my own athletes that can do it, that just go out there and just wrestle freely. Doesn't matter the situation, they just go get after it. And I know from years of experience as an athlete, it is way funner when you're wrestling to win instead of wrestling not to get beat.
Right.
When you're wrestling not to get beat, like you said, not a whole lot of wrestling happens. You feel like every little thing is critical, and it's a pressure-filled place to wrestle from, and it's not enjoyable, or to do any sport from. When you just go out and get after it, and you're just looking to put points on the board, or you're focusing on your skills and your performance, so much funner, so much more enjoyable, which kind of brings me back to what you were saying earlier about practice, smiling in practice and having fun, helping the kids enjoy it. Man, it's so easy to get caught up into like going hardcore all the time. And it also made me think about, and I've talked about this in other podcasts, but coaches being able to just be themselves, just be who you are, like use your actual personality whenever you go in and you coach. Sometimes we only coach how we were coached, and football, I think, is a good example of this, because I know a lot of football coaches, and I coached football for years and I grew up playing football, but a lot of football coaches are yellers. They yell all the time, always yelling, always yelling. Like you said, and after a while, it just becomes like just noise in the background and no one listens anymore. And I was reading a Tony Dungy book years ago, Mentor Leader, and it kind of really gave me freedom as a coach, just to coach how to use my personality. I'm not a yeller. And if I do yell or get mad, like you said earlier, everyone in the room is like, they just listen because they know, like, oh, dang, coach is mad. Because it doesn't happen that often, right? Or if I actually yell, it doesn't happen that often. So it's way more effective when it does happen. So for the coaches, it's more fun to be yourself and bring a little joy into it. And I always tell people, for me, I'm a little Tony Dungy, I'm a little Mike Tyson, like both come out, Sure. But it's also fun for the athletes when they can kind of go out and just enjoy and be themselves, and it releases some of that pressure.
Yeah. So one of the things one of the physical things we actually do in practice. So I had mentioned before, I think that to you, that my son had wrestled at Penn State and kind of got there right when Cale Sanderson came. And one of the things, anybody that's in wrestling now, they've heard their athletes talk about play wrestling.
Yeah.
So we introduced that into our program, play wrestling. It's been I would say in the last 20 years, it's been the best addition that I've added into our training and our preparation is play wrestling. Matter of fact, in like the off season, the majority of what we do is not actually hard, contest, what people call live wrestling. It's more play wrestling, which is close. It's just you're not doing the full effort of countering everything with a, gut busting sprawl. If somebody gets something really good, they get it. So you're still going full speed. You're still doing, but it's not the winning. If you try it, it didn't work. It's just play wrestling. So even the view, I actually came up with it. Again, I was talking to Tom Ryan about this, about the play wrestling aspect. And I actually wrote up something about like all the benefits, how to do it, and all the benefits to play wrestling is, I think it's like I said before, one of the best things I've added to it, because it encourages you to be a little bit more innovative, a little more free, willing to try things. And really, if you can compete that way, like I think it should help to actually form your style. And it really has, I think, helped us to get that, they talk about chain wrestling, it's like one of those terms I've heard for 40 some years, but I never heard anybody that told you how to do it. How do you help a kid chain wrestle? Because if you're just drilling, you have a preconceived notion in your mind what skill you're going to do. So you're just doing what you already know. And my own personal view is once you've got that skill down, the more you drill will not necessarily improve that. Like I think there's a leveling off once you have that skill down. Now what becomes the valuable part is how well you can innovate that, and timing and things like that's a huge part of wrestling is actually timing. So many times I've told kids that they, you see a kid, shoot in for a takedown, and that kid saw it coming a mile away, and you could see it coming a mile away. And I'll say, that should have been your fake. That shouldn't have been your shot. That should have been the fake. You could have used that as a fake and then, re-attack from there as he's recovering from that fake. You don't learn those things from just strictly drilling. You learn those from wrestling in maybe a more free, where it's not a contest. Because that's once you put kids into contest wrestling, like live wrestling, they're both trying to win.
Yeah.
They're both trying. And once you're both trying to win, it kind of shrinks how much wrestling you're going to do. You're going to be less likely to take risks. You're going to be, you're going to do less of that. Play wrestling encourages you to just open up without the fear of the thing, not working.
Yeah. Well, whenever we get off here, I'm going to have you send me that information, because it's been a game changer for us too. My kids, we're kind of known for funk. We do a lot of basics, but a lot of funk too. My kids are pinners. And we do a lot of scramble matches, a lot of play. We actually don't even do a ton of live. And, some people may think we need to do more live, but I know from years of experience as an athlete and as a coach, like you were saying, the wrestling shrinks whenever you go live. A lot of kids, they're not competing to win. And so you're going out and you're going to go to your bread and butter, and you're just going to stick with the things that you do. Yep. And so you're not growing a lot as a wrestler. It's fun to watch our kids scramble and be in scramble matches and flow from thing to thing and start to figure stuff out and become innovative. And the next thing you know, you see their wrestling begin to look a lot more like that.
Right. We talk about that flow of wrestling, like that teaches kids or helps develop their ability to flow, to go to the second move or the third move or even the fourth move. And I'll tell you another thing about that's really been is you rarely get anyone injured doing play wrestling, which is to me a huge benefit, because it doesn't matter how much training you get. If you're on the shelf, if you got, you can't do anything, you're just stuck. So that's actually a high priority for me, is to keep my kids as healthy as possible. You take as few risky things as you can. Like even coaches will play games with kids, to have fun. If I'm going to play a game, it's going to be like almost practically risk-free, because they'll play games even harder than they wrestle.
Oh, yeah.
They get super competitive. So you can't have, whatever you're doing has got to be like low risk thing, because they will go all out for playing some kind of a game.
Yeah. Well, I feel good. I have a lot of the same philosophies on these things. So we do a lot of the same stuff. Another thing I see a lot too is our kids get really comfortable in bad situations, or what some people think are bad situations, and they'll learn to wrestle through them. But I'm big on staying healthy. And, one of my college coaches really kind of changed, I guess, kind of set that mindset for us. My sophomore year in college, we just had a bunch of our guys get hurt. It just seemed like we just kept having like an injury bug. And second semester, I don't think we wrestled live once the entire second semester outside of actual competitions. In practice, we didn't wrestle live. It was kind of play wrestling. First time I'd ever kind of been introduced to that. Lots of different styles of drilling. And I don't know that I've ever walked into regionals and national tournament so healthy as I was that year, and just feeling good overall. So for me, as a coach, I'm like, I want my kids to feel that same way. And you can't control everything, but control the controllables.
Yep.
So, all right, kind of changing pace here. What are some of the things that you do as a coach, as just a human being? The way I like to kind of turn this is like high level habits. What are some of the things that you do in your own life that are really good habits that allow you to continue to grow as a coach, as a person, grow in your faith, things like that? So, and I guess some of these would be like daily non-negotiables, but also some things that maybe you just add in here and there.
Well, this is probably more, I guess, it's more of a personal thing, obviously, so you're really digging down underneath the surface here. But so I'm a Christian, and I believe what the Bible tells me. So that was something, fortunately, that I learned right from when I first accepted Christ as my Savior back in my mid-20s, was the value of what the Bible gives you. So that would actually be certainly part of my personal story, is that, I guess growing up, and maybe everybody's that way, but I guess growing up, we're all searching for some kind of significance, so I look at, I'm not disparaging on my town or community, but I look at it, I was kind of a nothing kid from a non-noteworthy family. Nobody had been athletes in my family, in a town that had not a great deal of significance, is not a powerhouse or really good at anything. And I guess this is probably pretty selfish, but I actually just wanted to be somebody. I just didn't want to be a faceless, like nobody even knew if I existed or not. I wanted to be somebody. So I guess that's probably why I started out in sports. So once I did that, and did the sports, I always wanted to figure out what the best way to do something was. So if there was a better way, I was kind of a little bit, I don't know if you'd call it obsessed, but I was always looking for a better way to do something. I was one of the early people. Nobody even lifted weights in my town. I was probably about the third or fourth person in that town's history that ever actually lifted weights, and so I was reading stuff, the little you could find in those days on how to build strength, and how to do wrestling skills. I was just always doing that. So same thing through college, same thing as when I started my coaching career, trying to find the best way to do something. But what I came to realize was, whatever the best thing that you're doing today, guess what? In 2 or 3 years, there's a new best thing.
Yeah.
Like you can never, it's always a process. So that's one thing that has been actually kept me interested in coaching. I'm always kind of trying to figure out a better way of preparing my athletes, both physically and mentally and emotionally and all those kinds of things. But once I became a Christian and was kind of introduced to, the Bible was more than just a bunch of words that you couldn't understand. It was like the best coaching book that I've ever read, and to find out that there's principles in there that are never going to go out of style. There's not going to be a new good way to do what's in the Bible. The Bible is the way. And I think we all struggle, all people kind of struggle with like, who do I want to be? Do I want to be, the fun-loving guy or the serious guy or the whatever? I think about thoughts that I had when I was like a high school student. Now, all of a sudden, there is kind of a best way of doing things. There's a right way and a wrong way. And I know it's not all that popular in our culture today that there is one way that's right and another way that's wrong. But once I looked at that, and I could now with confidence say, okay, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but you know what? I believe that this is the right way to approach this thing and the right way to do it. I'm going to do it regardless of how it works out. So like in the areas of integrity and honesty and truthfulness and things like that, it's like not negotiable. I can remember I coached at Easton High School. I was the head coach there for 7 years. And then I was actually out of coaching for several years. And I started back again at a smaller school, kind of right next door to Easton High School, Wilson High School. And I can remember going in for a job interview, and they're interviewing me, but it turned out I kind of was interviewing them by the time the thing was over. And one thing I told them, I said, you have to know this. I am not going to do anything that's like against the rules. I'm not going to do anything that's going to like take advantage of somebody. I'm going to, if we're going to win, we're going to do it in a way that's like honorable and respected and things like that. I'm not going to cut corners. I'm not going to, push the rules or stretch the rules or anything. I'm going to do it in a way that's, it's in the right way that nobody's going to have to make excuses for, that you don't have to explain away why you do this thing. We're just going to do it right. So to get back to your original question, I just highly value the principles and things that are actually found in the Bible. They've never gone out of style. They've never gone, out of, maybe it's gone a little bit out of trend, but not for me. And it's just something that I can count on. So, I think reading the Bible is a very, very valuable thing. I like to read books that are I don't read fiction. I read books. Most likely they're going to be something along the line of either leadership or, some kind of coaching thing, which that's really what coaching is leadership. And, like those are things that I just think when you're doing that with what's going on in your mind, it helps kind of keep you on the right path, because there's so many things, and I'm far from perfect. Believe me, my wife would be the first one to tell you that I, I make a lot of mistakes. I don't do a lot of, I'm again, far from perfect, but like I'm going to try to do, I think, give it a really, really good effort to always do it kind of in the right way, and do it in a way that would not be counter to what a biblical, approach to things. But I just think the Bible's got some tremendously great instruction, not just obviously for coaching, but for being a husband, and for being a father, and for being, a community person, and for being a friend, and for all those things, that there's just some wisdom in there that's utterly just fantastic wisdom. And, I've let God down a bunch of times, but he has never let me down. And, it's usually I've let him down. I've fallen short because I have failed to just keep that, that path that I probably knew that I should keep in the first place. So I think that, like, I have some of my favorite coaching books I always recommend. Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrman. That I think that should be required reading for every man and woman in America that coaches. Is the first time I was introduced to the term, the transactional coach versus the transformational coach. Like, he puts things in kind of like, uses terminology that really helps. It wasn't this grand, new world, but it really did help. It helped explain why I've done what I've done, and the way that I've done it. And that just made so much sense to me. The transactional versus transformational coach, that was huge. I mentioned before Tim Elmore's book on marching off the map. This has helped me define what the value of what I do as a coach. So, like you mentioned, we all like to win. Everybody, like, I definitely prefer winning over losing. It's highly preferred. It's like that. But if you get right down to it, I'm not sure that winning actually has any intrinsic value to it in and of itself. It's preferred. I like it. I would rather, win than lose. But to have value, unless you're a professional coach that you're going to get paid a lot more for winning, I'm not sure if it has a lot of it. This is what I know has value. And if we could bring our program down, or what our coaches believe, and I've been blessed to have coaches that we all think alike on these things, is that this is the value that we have in doing that. And this is simply this: how well we are preparing these young people for adulthood. because these kids, they're standing at the door, really. They're at the door, ready to open that door, walking into the adult world. And I see a lot of young people that are not prepared to enter adulthood. And the better we can do that, that has value. That has tremendous value. That's going to impact them for a lifetime. And, if they're 18 years old now, 70 years from now is a long time to live if you're not prepared to approach the adult world. So, I'm hoping that I'm modeling that. That's one of the things Tim Elmore mentions in his book, even that a lot of even adults today are not great models, that young people need to see what an adult looks like.
Yeah.
They don't need another buddy, really. They can need a friend, but not somebody that's just one of them. They need to have somebody that they can look at and say, this is how an adult acts. This is what an adult does in a crisis. This is what an adult does when he's having a bad day. This is what an adult does in his everyday life. This is how an adult treats other people. They need to see that, because if they don't see it in us as coaches, they may not see it at all. So I just think that that's incredibly valuable. That's why we're not soft on our kids. They don't need us to be. They don't need us to, like, if he's a good athlete, you cut him a break because you're trying to keep him in line. That doesn't help him, and it doesn't help the other kids that see it as well, because they're looking at it as, he gets a pass because he's talented, or that can go in a lot of ways. Because in the adult world, he gets a pass because, or he or she because they're good looking, or because they have money, or whatever. We need to teach them, you need to do the right things, and your value is going to be how well you can do all these things. He uses the term timeless skills. Like, we've all heard the terms soft skills and hard skills. We think of the hard skills. These are the skills you need to do your job. And the soft skills are things like, interacting with people, relationships, communication, work ethic, integrity, all those kind of. He uses the word timeless skills, which I really like a lot better, because those skills always were important. They're important now. And it doesn't matter what happens, they're going to be important in the future. And that's what we tell. If young people, if you can leave this and get and learn some of these timeless skills about being reliable, being dependable, working hard every day, that you can be counted on, you're reliable, you're going to always be valuable. You're always going to be in demand by somebody in your future, and you're going to be a much greater value to your family and for your community and all those things. So just letting them off the hook because you're trying to keep them in the lineup, that does not hurt. So we don't crush our kids, but we do our best to hold them accountable. And sometimes that requires, okay, we love you. We say this a lot. If somebody that we love you, but okay, you don't show up to practice and you don't call somebody, if that happens 5 years from now, you just got fired, so they need to understand that, and it's funny that the things that we do, we just relate them all the time to how does this work 5 years from now? Mm-hmm. Like, I think those things should work hand in hand. They should be parallel things, like you're going to be working with people. You've got to get along with people, so like I had mentioned that, I got the idea of having a creed, a team creed. So from you, it's one of the most valuable things I've added to my team. So this is what the Nazareth Wrestling Creed says. I'm a Nazareth wrestler. I welcome the challenges of our great sport. So that goes back to like the psychology. There's a lot of kids that fear the challenges of the sport. They dread it. And I will say that was me growing up. I got so nervous, and it was almost torture going out and competing. And I look back and say, I missed out on a lot of the enjoyment of my sport because I dreaded, what the outcome was going to be. So you need to welcome the challenges of your sport. The next line, I'm a fierce competitor who competes in a way that honors my family, my school, my community, and my team. So it's not just about winning. It's the way in which you do it. Do you do it in an honorable way? Are you showing courage? Are you showing resilience? Are you showing, you refuse to quit, all those things. My teammates count on me. So that's a really important thing. So that's in everything. Not only to give a good effort in practice, but in competition and in the classroom and in your behavior in and out of school and all those kinds of things. Next line, I will always consider what's good for the team before myself. That's a huge thing. Everybody, unless you're living on an island someplace, are going to be impacting all the people around you. Very few people just work by themselves and don't impact other people. You either have clients or you're working on a team or something. Your influence on that team is huge. Like that team should be better off because of your presence, not people wish that you weren't there. I will respond to adversity in a way that inspires others. That's a huge thing. My kids know this all the time, or I tell them this all the time. I said, your success in life is not going to be due to everything going your way. And they think it is. They think I just got to put all these ducks in a row, get everything perfect, and then my life is going to be perfect. It's not true. I said, your life, success in your life is not going to be dependent on everything you're going your way. What it will be dependent on is what do you do and how do you respond when things don't go your way? That's life. It's we as adults, we all know that, so not that you want it, but when those things come, those difficulties come, it's your response to those things that's going to have a huge impact on your success and even your happiness in your life. The next line is, I will never quit. And the last one, again, they repeat, I'm a Nazareth wrestler. So again, we do this creed at the end of every practice. I think again, I just thank you so much for sharing that with me, because it's been a huge thing on our team. That in itself can help. It helps set the culture of your team. Like those are the things that it's said up there. It's not just, okay, you tell them one time, they're repeating that every day. It helps kind of solidify the culture, and it gets across to them the things that you value as a coach, is important for them to get, not just as a wrestler, but as a person. Every single one of those things are going to benefit these young people later on in their lives.
Yeah, that is excellent. That's an excellent creed. And man, I couldn't have explained it any better or any other way. I mean, that's so whenever I hear that and those things you just explained in the creed, I know what the culture of your program looks like. I know the things that your kids are learning, in there, and that those things, and I mean, kids are kids, right? I mean, hopefully we positively impact all of them, but those are things that they can take and use, like you said, timeless skills. They can use other areas of their life down the road, which is so powerful. And it's why we do what we do, hopefully.
Yeah. And somebody, I'll remember this line I read it many years ago, but it really helped to define that whole thing on discipline, because like, that's always that thing is you want to have a well-disciplined, because discipline is really a critical part in these kids' life. They're undisciplined. I tell them, if you don't have discipline, you're no good to us. You're not even any good to yourself.
Yeah.
If you think about it. And I've heard this and I've shared this with other people, that this idea that as a coach, as a leader of whatever you allow, you encourage. Mm-hmm. So every time you let something slide, or something you see, for example, one of my pet peeves sort of is the abuse of injury time by an athlete. So maybe they're getting put to their back, or maybe they're, the guy's getting some momentum and scoring, and you just use it for a timeout, a time to either catch your physical breath or, be able to reset yourself mentally and emotionally. Life doesn't let you do. It's number one, it's unethical. In my opinion, it's very unethical to utilize a rule that's set for supposed to be a legitimate injury and, and use it to benefit yourself. So college probably even has that better. There's a kind of not a definite penalty, but even for any injury in college, of course, the other wrestler gets the chance of position. So, but those things are important. Like for us, you'd have to be injured to really injured to take an injury time, because we've just, and kids will do dumb things, I know, but to us, it would be like, that's like violating, almost a sense of who we are. Like, we just don't do that, that's not fair. And, we want to do things, fairly and not take unnecessary advantage of somebody.
It's funny you say that, because it just clicked. It just went back and clicked. So during your leadership academy, you were talking to us, and you were talking a little bit about that, having that mindset. And you said something, you kind of jokingly, but we don't even take blood timeouts, like even if we're bleeding or whatever. And so I told my kids that kind of almost jokingly, right? We were talking about that. We don't take timeouts, like we make them take timeouts. And I had this kid, just kind of a warrior, was a really solid wrestler for us. He's a college football player, but he's just sort of a warrior kind of kid. But his nose would bleed all the time. And I think it was his junior year. He was in a battle, a real good wrestling match. And anyway, he shoots him, but he gets hit in the nose and takes the kid down. And he ends up putting the kid on his back. And I didn't realize he's bleeding. He's got the kid on his back, and he reaches up and he's holding his nose with one hand while he's hitting the kid. And the ref stops it. And he comes over and he's like, "Coach," he's like, "I was trying to keep all the blood in. I wasn't going to use a blood timeout." And I was cracking up. I was like, "All right, buddy. Like, if you're really injured, we can use one."
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, he took it to heart.
When you think about so if these young people that we're coaching, like, you want them to go into their adult lives with that same attitude. Like I don't want to know that the guy doing surgery on me cheated his way to a medical degree. I want to know that the pilot that's flying my plane didn't cheat off somebody else's paper when he's taking the test. So it's more than just, you want to develop, it's more than just the outcome. It's how you get there. And, we're going to do it. We're not going to, we're not going to cheat. We're going to do it the right way. And kids are kids. Kids will do goofy things. I did goofy things, but we're going to kind of hold them accountable. We're going to help them. That's our job, is to help them grow and to reach those things. But, sometimes, we're not going to allow somebody to do. So I've done this 3 times in my coaching career. For some weird reason, they seem to be about 10 years apart, spaced, is having one of my wrestlers take an injury time, while he's getting taken to his back or whatever, he going down and he, twirls his finger, and the referee has to stop the match, because he's calling injury. So we'll go out, we'll look at him. What's wrong? My shoulder, whatever he would say. And of course, you have to know that it's not a real injury, obviously. But when it's over and he gets ready to get back, we've said, "Nope, that's it. Match is over. You lose. We default. We forfeit this or default." So, usually they're kind of shocked, but they know, if we let them get away with it, guaranteed somebody else is going to do that same thing later on. They see, but it's just like business. You seem to benefit from cheating, you want to know that your client, if you say your client's getting something, your client's getting that thing. You're not going to give them less than what you promised or what they think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Coach. Well, as we get ready to kind of round this out, I told you I'm going to come back to it, but you can answer all 3, or you can just answer one, expound upon it. But tell me about a hero, a highlight, or a hardship. I always say hardship. Hero, highlight, or a hardship in your life.
Yeah. So my hero is my mom. Okay. So she is, born 1926, November. So she's climbing up to 95 years old. She was the quiet. So my dad left home when I was in junior high. My mom raised 3 kids. just one of those quiet rocks of the family. She's like 4'11", little lady, but she would have done anything for us, but she wouldn't have gotten us out of trouble. That would not, but she would have sacrificed whatever. I can remember going to a tournament and she, woke up at like, 2 a.m. to drive me to Erie to catch a car to go to some tournament. And she had to work that day, like she would have done anything for us. She was a Christian. She was just the rock of the family and would have just, she's just a silent, like I look at, that's what a mom should be right there was my mom. So highlight, gosh, I've had a number. Obviously what we'd say is our family, the birth of our kids, the marriage of my wife, but I'll take an athletic one. My older son actually transferred to Nazareth in his junior year to wrestle for me. And that year did not go well. We had a very good team. He would have been considered one of the worst kids on the team at the time, which is not easy, to handle that. But something happened with him right at the end of the season where he just kind of started figuring some things out, made just a little adjustment thing, and he just started winning. And he ended up, I think he was seated like 5th at our district tournament. He ended up winning the district tournament. I think there was like 5 or 6 kids that had beaten him that year that were in his weight class. He wins districts. He actually was in the regional finals. So that's the next stage for us in Pennsylvania, which means he qualified for state. So he went from, he never even dreamed that he'd actually even wrestle in the state tournament anytime in his career. And just happened the first round, there's 4 rounds of, to 3 rounds to get to the finals. He wrestled a kid that he had beaten before in the first round. So he wrestled a kid that was way, way, way better than him. Somehow he just wore the kid down and wins that one. So now he's in the state semifinals. He's guaranteed a place. I mean, this is so far beyond, like if he had just walked out then, I would have been thrilled, like we're so far ahead of the game right now. And he wrestles a kid that's like from the Pittsburgh area. He was undefeated, picked one of the possible guys to win the weight class. And he beats him in overtime, a takedown in over, he's got down early and fought his way back. And that was when he won in the semifinals to go to the finals. It was almost an out of body experience. Of course, everybody in the arena is watching, dad and son together in this, Cinderella story that's hanging in here with this kid that's undefeated and ends up it was just like a thing of movies, made for. So I'd say that was athletically, that in the athletic world, that was, and I've had a lot of great, kids win great matches and stuff, but when it's your own flesh and blood, it's always something a little bit extra. Heartache, I've had a few pretty good ones. Probably the one that was the most painful was I was married young. I was married just at the end of my college career, and I was married and moved to Easton, got a dream job at working in the Easton School District. And the second year I become the head coach. The former head coach there unexpectedly left. So I'm the head coach of Easton High School at like 22 years of age. And, it's a storied program, one of the most successful in the US. And here I am as the head coach. And we had an undefeated season my first year as head coach. It was like everything went. And my wife at the time just kind of got bored with marriage and moved back to her hometown in central PA. And I was left in a town because I moved there and really didn't know anybody. And I only knew a couple people then, just left there by myself. And I was like really, really depressed. Like I can remember thinking, I don't think I was suicidal, but I can remember thinking, if something would happen and it wouldn't be all that bad if the things would just like end right now. That was the heartbreak that for me, but also was the very thing that made me think, there's got to be more to this life than just looking for, things to go your way, just kind of like a lot that we're talking about. And it was actually because of that I really turned to God and said, God, I don't know what this whole Christian life is about, but it's got to be better than just hoping things work out for you. And that was the low point of my life, but also the beginning of the best part of my life. So in the meantime, since then, I met tremendous woman that, we've been married for 32 years, no, 33 years coming up. And, had 3 kids and just, it's been phenomenal. So low point but sometimes you don't know where those low points are going to lead. For me, it was, to the best part of my life.
Yeah. It's a defining moment.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely defining moment.
Yeah. That is awesome. So, well, Coach, thank you so much for being on. I mean, you said earlier, you're a good storyteller. I just enjoy listening to you talk, man. You have so much wisdom. I enjoy getting to hear your stories, and it's truly an honor to have you on the podcast.
Oh, this is fun. I'm so glad we got a chance. Of course, I read about you. I read things you post. I read all these things, but it's not quite in person. But the next best thing is being able to see on Zoom and, communicate and talk again. And yeah, it's been like 5 years or so, I think, when we were, in Kansas. So yeah, it was meant to be. Definitely one of those connections. And I look back at my life. I've been blessed. I mean, so blessed in my life to have made these connections with some really, really great people like that have really influenced my life. And you might not realize it, but you have really influenced my life. I think about you actually often, and just the way that you do things and the passion you have of really, when you think about it, it's a care for other people. It's what it is. Like, you care how other people do things. Like, as we know, everybody knows that a lot of people know that, like, a coach is the second most influential person that a person will have in their whole life. It's only trumped by their parents. They're the only person that will have more of an influence. So with the tremendous influence that a coach has, that should sober us a little bit. That's a kind of a sobering thought, because with that influence can be a good one, but it also potentially can be, a bad influence, and that is the inside out coach and Joe Ehrmann's story, of the negative influences that he had he was a great athlete, but of his coaches. So, you have a passion. Just everything about you of helping coaches and helping any people in like a sphere of influence. And that's, I think John Maxwell said that leadership is influence, like really nothing more, nothing less. I tell my athletes that, because that word leadership is used a lot. I said, just look at it this way. It's influence. You are influencing people, maybe good, and you're influencing everybody. The people sort of, I hate to say, but below you are the ones that you are in, a position of leadership over, but you're influencing the people that are on your level too. So your peers, all the people on your team. And I said, you don't realize it, you guys, but you influence us as your coach. Like, you make my day better, or you make my day maybe not better because of the way you carry yourself, the way you what you've done, the way you just behave and things like that. So yeah, that's like that's a big deal. And you have that passion to influence, like coaches and leaders, because of their influence over so many people. And I just really respect for what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate that. I'm humbled by it, and I appreciate it. So, all right, before we jump off here, where can people follow you on social media or your website? And, for those listening, now that we're kind of getting maybe a little better with the COVID stuff, Coach Crowell is a phenomenal speaker, comes in, trains people, speaks, motivates. So where can we follow you and find you?
Well, I do Twitter. So I think it's, is it, I don't know. Just put my name in,
And I'll find it and I'll put it in the show, in the link for the show notes as well.
Yeah. And I mean, anybody can email me. I'm thrilled to share anything that I have. I've sent so many things to so many people that figure if you'll take the time to ask me, I will do it. I don't give it out, just give it to them. Usually I say, if you want it, contact me and I'll be happy and thrilled to send it to you. I do have a website. It's called Coaching Beyond the Victory. And I haven't really updated it, but it's got a bunch of stuff on there. Obviously, it's got my my contact information and stuff like that. So it's just, my email is just dcrowell at rcn.com. And, anybody wants to contact me, you are welcome to do so. I'll be happy to do whatever I can to help.
Yep. Like I said, I'll put that in the show notes, and then, I have your website saved in my favorites on my computer. And I've went there many times and looked through it and looked at your stuff. So again, I was trying to find inspiration, and you're one of those coaches that inspire me. So yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for being on, and for everybody listening, make sure you take notes, go back through, listen, take some notes and things that you can add to your own life, and then share this with somebody else that, you can, that you think, hey, you know what, man, this would be a positive impact. Or I got a coach that, loves wrestling, or a coach that, really wants to build a culture, and share it out with them. And because Coach Crowell brings us a lot of wisdom. So again, thank you, Coach. And for everybody listening, may God bless you, smile upon you, and give you peace. Till next time, we're out.